Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Let's get rolling. If you have been wondering, as I have personally, why I have not been making more podcasts on Gaza, on the West Bank now, on Lebanon, on Iran, the answer is simple. I sometimes literally run out of words to say. I feel like, well, I could make a podcast, but I've said that already. I don't see any point in simply repeating myself for the sake of words. I think words should be used cautiously and meaningfully. When I say something, it should have a clear purpose and a clear objective. And lately, I've been feeling as though anything I can say will simply be a repetition of what I have said so many times before, that I just don't understand what would be the purpose, the point of my making another podcast episode on the activities of the Zionist entity in Greater West Asia. And yet, another part of me feels as though, as a guy with a PhD, I have a moral responsibility to use it appropriately. That's what they tell us. That's what they tell us in graduate school, that when you get a PhD, you have an obligation, a service obligation, to be of service to your community. Getting a PhD for me was not for me. It was so I could do something that would be beneficial for my community and for the world as a whole. And so I do realize that as a guy with a PhD, I really need to think of something to say, something to do. After all, that is why I set up this podcast, which is effectively a continuation, in part, of my professorship now that I am retired. My writing books and my research are also parts of it. Together, they make up what I call the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism, which again, for me, is like my own personal institution of higher learning, even though it is simply me. It has no other members. But I do feel at this point, right now, after just having engaged in a private conversation with a few people, that I have something now that I can add that may be helpful, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe meaningful to some people, I hope. May have some effect. But again, my concern is I have been making these podcasts on Greater West Asia now for a long time, or at least it feels that way to me. And what has gotten better? Nothing. What has gotten worse? Everything. Now, I am not saying that I am making it worse. Obviously not. What I'm saying is that I don't think that my words have had any impact at all on the situation in the world. Now, did I expect them to? Not really, not really, but my concern is beyond that. I look at the people who watch my podcast, and I realize they are close to zero. I get almost no likes. I get hardly any comments at all. Nothing. Now, I know that there are some people who do watch my podcast based upon people leaving comments for me in general in other places, but not under my videos, not in the comments section. No thumbs up and no thumbs down. And yes, if you can download a plugin to any major browser, you can put the thumbs down back into YouTube, in case you didn't know that. I did. Do I ever use it? No. I like seeing it there. It gives me a sense of power, of agency, that if I wanted to say, I hate you, this podcast, I hate what you said, I can. But I've never done that. And I don't think that I ever will. At most, I will simply leave, which I've done many times. What I wanted to do is to read you this very short thing, this very short excerpt from my book, Eudaimonic Utopia, which again is linked in the discussion section directly below this video. And I would encourage you to, if you have not done so already, to read the book. It is a work in progress. I don't know if or when I will ever complete it. I may never complete it. I may die before it is completed, but this is the book I've worked on the longest of all of my 27 books, because I can't bring myself to end it. I just can't. I have too many things I want to add. So here is that portion that I wanted to read for you right now. Maybe you've read it already, since I've been blabbing. The state terrorist campaign by the Zionist entity will never end amicably, since Benjamin Netanyahu, Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump, whichever one of them becomes president, actually next year in the election in November, are all too cowardly. They're too cowardly for different reasons, and I will discuss those in a bit, to shift course. So, at this point in time, I have stopped producing too many podcasts on this disgusting spectacle, since they are obviously falling on deaf ears. And I don't mean you. I don't mean you. I mean the people in power who have the ability to change things. Sometimes I feel like a fish in an aquarium. I am looking out upon a world I obviously fail to understand, although that sensation is not new to me as an autistic. The context of the sensation is entirely different. That's what I wanted to read. Now, as to my comments on cowardice, and I'm saying this as somebody who has in many ways been a coward myself, as I pointed out in my last 2 episodes, I should have stood up to that individual for the way that that individual treated 2 men. I should have done that 30 years ago or 20 years ago, and I did not. So I cannot claim to be brave either. I am not brave. So I am not speaking down at other people. Far from it. I recognize that I have failed to be brave in many aspects of my life, all too many aspects of my life. But I look at people who either occupy the highest office in their country or are looking to occupy it in January of next year. The first refers to Benjamin Netanyahu, and the second refers to Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Presumably, one of them will become president of the United States in January. And heaven help us if either one of them get into the White House, because neither one will change the course that President Joe Biden has placed us upon, it would seem. Now, we don't know, but based on their own words, that's what they've said. They have pledged to support Benjamin Netanyahu, Hamelech Bibi, King Bibi. Why? I don't know. All I can think of is pure cowardice. A fear that if they do not, they will not be elected, they will lose votes, they will be challenged within their own political parties, whether Republican or Democrat. And both of those parties are very, very strongly pro-Israel, very, very strongly Zionist. And as somebody in Bund, a Bundist, despise Zionism, despise it. There is nothing more than I would like to see than a Palestine from the river to the sea. I don't care where those Israelis go. They can go back to Israel, back to Europe, back to America, back to Australia, wherever they came from, or their ancestors, their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents came from. I don't care. They can go back. They can find another place to live, a new Israel if they want. Let them do it. I don't care. Let them buy an island and move there. But not in Palestine. Not seizing the land of indigenous people, which the Likud coalition is continuing to do right as I speak. And right now, Netanyahu is saying that he anticipates another problem from the north. Is that true? Who knows? But the fact that he's saying it tells you that he is anticipating additional military activities by the Israeli Defense Forces against the Palestinians, and who knows where. Gaza? The West Bank? Who knows? I doubt it will be Jordan, given the fact that Israel and Jordan have very friendly relations with one another. But who knows? There is no way of knowing. That man is a monster. And I find it intolerable that so many people from my own ancestry, Ashkenazi Jews, are supporting a genocide when Ashkenazi Jews were killed by Adolf Hitler during World War II. How could that be? How could that be? We are living in a world of sorrows, a world of tribulation, a world of no regrets. Power, and only power, is what matters. If the other side dies, if children suffer, who cares? That seems to be the cry of the hour. And so it will be for now. For now. No one knows the future. But given what we do know, that one of those two people, Trump or Harris, will be in the White House in January, that is not a very hopeful sign. So that's Trump and Harris. They obviously are afraid of not being elected. Now, how they actually feel about Likud, how they actually feel about King Bibi, who knows? On the other hand, King Bibi is also a coward, but for a different reason. He is afraid of his trial on corruption charges, which may also land him in prison. Unlikely, but it could. Maybe war crimes charges based upon some of the activities he has been engaging in over the last year. No one knows. So everyone is acting on the emotion of cowardice and nothing else but cowardice. There is no love. There is no love for the Palestinians, for the Lebanese, for the Iranians. Only a desire to win and to conquer out of fear. But if one is cowardly, what does cowardly mean? Cowardly means weakness. Cowardice is not a sign of strength at all. Does that mean that we have a possible good sign ahead? I don't know. The Israeli economy is in tatters as I speak again. Most Israelis do not like King Bibi, and not for the reason that most American Jews don't like him. They don't like him because of the economy and because he has not brought back the Israeli hostages. Those are the primary reasons. The war itself matters to some Israelis. Some. But that's not the primary reason why Bibi Netanyahu is opposed. No matter who becomes prime minister after the time of Netanyahu, and that time will come sooner or later, that person will inevitably be a Zionist as well, maybe even further to the right than Bibi Netanyahu. And so I realize that this episode has not been positive, and I'm sorry for that. It's not been comforting. It's not been comforting for me either. Not that I make these podcasts to comfort myself. I don't. I make them to express myself, to share what little knowledge I may or may not have with whoever might be listening out there. And I hope you are. I don't want anything for doing this. I certainly don't want your money. I wouldn't accept it. This is a non-monetized podcast. I have no account set up on Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee to get money. Nobody can send me money. What I do want is for as many people as possible to stand up and be counted. To stand up, if you're in the United States, to the duopoly, which is Zionist, to stand up against King Bibi. If you're in Israel, or in any other part of the world, make your voices known. Make them known. Do not allow anybody to intimidate you. Reading a story about this rabbi, this female rabbi that was just fired, an American rabbi, for expressing views against Netanyahu. How tragic. That was here in the United States. Unforgivable. Totally unforgivable. A rabbi should have the right to express her or his views without fear of being fired. But not anymore. Not with the so-called new anti-Semitism, which encompasses not only anti-Semitism, but also anti-Zionism. For the time being, this has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.